Hi everyone, I'm Jace.
And I'm Yin Ling.
Thank you for joining us for another episode and welcome to Freelance Creative Exchange, where every episode we speak to a freelancer about freelancing and the gig economy.
But today we have quite a different guest in the sense that they are not really freelancers, but we introduce them more a little bit later. We have Ashima and Shawn with us today.
Yo.
So,
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So Ashima is actually a co-founder and CEO of Warrior 9 VR, which is an immersive content company that specializes in CG animated VR from Singapore, right?
Yeah. And we have Shawn today with us. Shawn is a CEO and design director of Better Brew Productions, which is a local gaming company that specializes in mobile strategy games.
So very welcome to both of you, and thank you for joining us on this one of our first podcasts here, right in Pixel. What can you just tell us more about what projects you guys are working on right now? Anything?
Okay, so we are working on a couple of games.
Okay.
So there's a strategy game, which is actually a lot about tribalism, people working together, but also working against each other. Resource scarcity is a thing. That'll be out hopefully end of this year.
Right.
We're also doing a idle sort of a town building simulator. That'll be out in October. So more casual audience for that second one.
Right.
Okay. How about yourself, Ashima?
So we do two things. We do commissioned VR work and AR also. And then we do our own IP. So we're working on an animated CG science fiction series called The Phoenix, which is in VR. So 10-minute episodes. And we're hoping to release that later this year. And then apart from that, we are also doing, it's kind of an ongoing thing, a project called Oceans We Make, which is about plastic pollution in the ocean. So there's a VR sort of interactive game about that, and then we're now creating some AR content around it as well.
That's interesting. Okay. That sounds very exciting, both projects, both of you.
And today it sounds like we are actually into the very high-tech industries.
Yeah,
one
that's
from the
right.
mobile game and one from the VR.
So actually, like Jace introduced, right? We usually have this podcast where we introduce freelancers, but today we want to sort of talk about the other side of the screen where I'm sure both of you, in the course of running a business, you have hired freelancers and have worked with them in one capacity or other. So have you two actually worked with freelancers? Do you work with them very often?
For us, yeah, it depends on what the project requires. We'll hire freelancers as we need them. And of course the core of all the work happens in our team. But for example, sound engineer, we don't have a sound engineer on our team, so we would work with someone for that. For all of our projects, we hire actors to come on board for, to voice a lot of the stuff that we're doing. From time to time, we might need other functions, and we'll look outside of the team for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Shawn, in doing games, you have a lot of creatives on board already. What kind of freelancers do you hire?
I think for us, actually, it really depends from project to project. So we do have a core team, and we are what you call full stack. But we've definitely worked with freelancers of, in fact, all the disciplines, from coders to artists, to sound engineering, composing, even writing. So I think we're very open to that. In fact, we do need it, because the games industry is very project focused. So if the project has a tight deadline or a new project springs up, the core team just can't handle all of it by ourselves. I think the games industry is also a very tight-knit one. We're all effectively family, so we don't necessarily view it as freelance. It's more like, hey, there's a cool project, let's go work on it. Do you know someone who's like great for this art style? And you go like, yeah, I'd love to work with so-and-so.
Right.
I
So I think due to the nature of the industry, yeah, we're very project focused anyway. So freelancing or working freelancers is a natural thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's similar with, just to add to your point, the VR industry is so new. So it's a very small community. And similar in concept where you kind of just draw on your friends and network and say, hey, you know, I need help with this thing. Can you
Yeah,
come
actually,
on
one of
board?
the things that I was very curious about, especially for VR, is that, like you mentioned, it's such a new industry, you know, such a new specialization and niche. So how do you find the right kind of people to work on that? You know, a lot of them might not have the experience in doing such a thing. How do you choose them?
Yeah, I mean, it is an industry where really nobody has long-term experience, right? So we're all kind of learning as we go along. We draw a lot of expertise from the gaming side, of course, because we're also in CG, so there's a lot of overlap there. And it's always a question of finding people who are just open to learning on the job and troubleshooting and being, you know, approaching things creatively. So it's not so much that you have to show me that you know all the software, you know, but it's more about, okay, you have the basic skills and this is going to be a project where we need to all put our thinking caps on to make what we want happen. So you have to be a person who wants to do that. And that is one of the things that, you know, I look for when we're talking to freelancers, because I feel like they kind of fall into two buckets. There are freelancers who are they just want to execute, so come tell me what I need to do and I'll do it. And then there are freelancers who want to be collaborative and you know, have an actually input into the project. So those are the people that we sort of focus on.
Yeah. So, Ashima, we understand your background is more into news journalism, you know, communications and things like that, and it's for as long as a decade, about 10 years. Then what made you decided to actually switch the industry and then move into like the high tech, you know, part of content creations?
You make me feel old. Okay. Well, I started off in news, in TV. And actually, after 10 years of doing that, felt that, you know, I've sort of loved telling stories and how can I apply that in another way? And I moved into impact storytelling, so still kind of filmmaking and, you know, but just a different type of storytelling. And so, you know, once I was working with actually a nonprofit that kind of ran like a startup. So we were exposed to a lot of people who were running their own businesses. And it got to a sort of point where I could leave the team, start my own company, continue to work for them, and then do other stuff as well. And so that's what I did. And VR kind of came along as another way of telling a story. So we had, through our own company, we were doing a lot of passion projects. And we had a script that had been floating around for a few years, a sci-fi script, which originally we thought we'd do for TV. But, you know, as time went by, realized that's going to be hard to get off the ground. Could we do it for web? That's also hard to get off the ground. And then we met someone who was like, let's just try a bit of it in VR. And VR had just kind of started as a thing people could actually do themselves. We made 90 seconds of it. Were absolutely blown away by the possibility, and then we were like, let's just do it. So yeah, that's how.
That's very brave.
I think it's like, but I think it's more about just the excitement of telling stories in new ways. That's really what it is.
That's true. I guess we're all finding new ways and new stories to tell. So,
Yeah. Shawn as well, right?
Actually, it's somewhat similar. There's many things I'm familiar about it. So I think a lot of the current crew and myself, we all used to work for much larger gaming companies. And I mean, we learned a lot there and had a good time as well. But I think there came a point where we wanted more ownership over what we were making. I think we kind of looked around, realized that we had the ideas, we had the team, we had contacts to the investors, we had contacts to the publishers. What was stopping us? And literally it was a why not question.
Yeah.
Right.
I had opportunity to go elsewhere, right? But I think we really thought about it and said, I mean, we're still young. May as well. There's less things that are dependent on us.
Right.
It was a good time to try. And I think as it went on, I think we realized how blessed we were, essentially, in that sense. Like there were many things that we could call on or pull on, many contacts. And I think that's primarily what drove. I mean, yeah, I'm here speaking about it, but for us, we're very close as a team. So we looked at the whole thing and said, yeah, okay, we've got enough to form a small army. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's good. So, but you started out or at least you had some experience freelancing yourself, right?
Yeah. Actually, a lot of the team.
Yeah. But we always say over here that freelancing is running your own business essentially.
It
but
is essentially.
How different is it transitioning from just having to care about yourself, and then suddenly having a team, and having to be responsible for so many other people as well?
I think it's similar in some ways. You're just expanding the scope and the scale. So, I mean, even as a freelancer, you have responsibilities to the project, to the team that you're working with.
Right.
And I mean, the best projects that I've been on, I mean, your family. So now it's more like you're a closer kind of family. But like I said, games industry is very project based. So no matter what, you want this dream to come true. You want to make this dream together. In that sense, I'd say that the feeling is very much the same. And if you're a freelancer and you're working with a team that you love on a project that you love, there's no real difference. It's very much there.
Yeah.
That's assuming that they deal fairly with you and you deal fairly with them, right?
Yeah,
But
Yeah, that's
that
very
should be part of it.
important.
That should be part of it.
Yeah, but I also understand, Shawn, you spent some times in Australia as well. So in terms of the freelancing landscape in Australia and also versus Singapore, is there a lot of difference, or actually it's quite similar?
I think it's not so much about location. It's about timeline in career or timeline in skill set. So no matter what, I think when you start out, it's rough. So it's about trying to find the first project or company or client that gives you a chance, and in a way that, I mean, you're also giving them a chance. We've all heard horror stories of like either side getting screwed over. So I think I see it as being responsible on both sides, right? So as a freelancer, you have to be responsible to the project. You can't like double book stuff. If not, you just don't have the bandwidth. You can't. I mean, pitching is good. Knowing how to sell is great, but you can't oversell as well. And then obviously from the other end, like, please be fair to your freelancers. Like they're only human. They're not gonna pull off like X amount of work in Y time, that kind of thing. Like you work in the industry, you know what's humanly possible.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, do you guys have any like horror stories to share? On the other hand, do you have any positive, like, oh man, I would definitely, I'm always looking for this kind of freelancer. Do you have those kinds of experiences?
I mean, I would say we put a lot of time into who we'll work with, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And
The interview process, you mean, like, or getting to know that person better?
Yeah, because again, for me, it's more attitude than skill set. Sometimes, I mean, it depends what job function it is, but like, I really want freelancers to feel like when they work with us, they're part of our team for that period of time. So it's not like you're an outsider who's just executing something, but, you should feel a sense of you belong with us on that project. And and also not everyone has that personality, so which is fine. So not everyone wants to work that way. So I think we really try to know people, and so much of it is also our network. So like we were saying earlier, you kind of know who you can work with because they're in your network. So
So it's sort of like, the people who you hang out with is more or less you can click with them anyway, and that's the
Yeah.
reason you hang
So
out with
how
them.
would you advise a new freelancers, right, to start building that kind of network that you mentioned about? How, if let's say a freelancer who is interested in VR, augmented reality, what are some of the suggestions you would give to the freelancer in terms of approaching you or your companies and things like that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I do is I'm chair of the Asia VR Association. So that's a free organization to join. We have a community of close to 3,000 people. And what we really do is we do hold regular meetups once every 2 months. We try to do them. And really the point of it is for people to meet each other. And, because also the industry is at a point where there's everyone from hardcore developers to very casual enthusiasts.
Yeah.
And it's just about bringing everyone into a room so that they can all know each other. And so everyone's welcome. So part of it is looking up opportunities like that. And I think in any industry nowadays, at least you have things like meetup.com. So that's how we organize our meetups, right?
Right.
Which, you didn't have when I was, 10 years ago when I was, transitioning into a new field, stuff like that didn't exist. So, there's Facebook groups as well.
Yeah, true. Those are very useful.
Yeah. I don't know if the games
Exactly
industry
the
has.
same. So for us, it's things like IGDA, Singapore Indies Meetup.
Yeah.
So it's exact same platforms,
Right.
meetup.com, Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Then there's your unofficial WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just find the circles where they or people all swim together. And sometimes I think the tangent ones are good as well. But I mean, like, I also shop to, I think it's IXDA. They specialize in UX and stuff. So it's like, what are games but shaped user experiences, right?
Right.
For certain things. So
Right.
sometimes finding that.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the common issues or challenges that we've always had with not only freelancers that we, but even the guests that we have had on our show as well, is that is the networking part. Because I think a majority of creatives having being more used to one side of the brain, and it's a lot of times a very individual passion. To network is actually really difficult. So let's say you guys are at a networking session. What are you guys looking for in a potential hire?
I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, my crew call this weird. So I've learned how to be an extrovert. So but my true nature is I'm actually an introvert.
Yeah, that's the same for a lot of us actually.
Yeah, especially in the creative field, right? So I really need my space. I kind of want quiet time to think. So for me, I don't really view it as networking. That feels a bit soulless. I don't know, so I reframe it in my mind. So I try and find the commonality. Like what do you love? What are you fighting for? What kind of projects do you want to make? So I think when, or at least when I look at it that way, right? When I try and approach it that way, then it's your, in a way, shortcutting to trying to find someone's values and seeing whether they align, looking at their outlook, whether there's things you could align with. Again, alignment, I think, right? And if you do that, then the chances are, especially in a creative field, you're gonna end up with projects that have something in common.
Right.
And for me, it's about finding that bridge.
Right.
So if you go like, oh, do you like a sense of adventure, or artists, like how about steampunk or floating islands? They go like, yeah, and it's like, you're probably getting hired sometime. Because I mean, you understand, right? So there's this contextual knowledge, basically associated with that. Sometimes some of that it's hard to test for in a formal way. You're just trying to see whether they get the references.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, and like I said, creative industry, so you go like, oh, there's a reference to like Rick and Morty if you want like a certain mood or something, right?
Yeah.
But if they're like, what's Rick and Morty? Then you're like,
Who's Rick?
Yeah.
this is going to be difficult,
Yeah.
right?
That's true.
How about like that anime or this anime, or Made in Abyss, that kind of beauty, Studio
Right.
Ghibli, then you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, versus like, what? If they go, what? Then it's like, yeah, probably not the art style we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you say it's not, you don't kind of look at it as networking. That's a good way to put it, because that does scare people. And I also had to learn to be a networker, you know, like I think it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, especially in our region, you know, because we're not naturally outgoing folks, right?
To keep to ourselves.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that first step, right? To convince yourself to talk to the next person.
I mean, I actually did a lot of work like to become that way. So kind of self-development, you know, reading things and just trying things out. And, you know, you were saying that at an event, how do I sort of...
scan and look
Yeah,
for potential
I mean, it's really about, for me, people who are enthusiastic and just come up to me and want to talk. You know, like, so many people will just sort of not ever engage. And, you know, and I think the people who do engage... I mean, I'm always happy to follow up, to meet them, whatever it might be. And one of the things, actually, points I was going to make about whenever we get approached by people. So we do often get emails, like cold emails from people or something, right? It's the persistent people who get my attention. Because also, we're a small, busy company.
Right.
And it's not always that the first time round someone's messaged me and I just, you know, it's like a million things going on and it sort of slips through the cracks. But the people who keep coming back are the ones where I'm like, oh, right, yeah, I need to meet this person or talk to this person. Yeah.
Okay. So, but we've talked a lot about, I guess, personality and the character that you guys are looking for. But are there any specific skill sets you think are, you know, you can't do without, no matter how enthusiastic you are, like, I really want to join this gaming industry or this VR, AR industry. You do still have to have those essential skills in order to step into it first. Yeah. Do you guys have any of those that you're pitching?
Definitely. I think for us, if you talk about working with freelancers, then it's just simply a portfolio. What have you done? What are you rocking up with?
Right.
And I mean, to answer the perennial question, which will always come up like, oh, I don't have enough of that, then the answer is very simple. You make. You make anyway, right? So I think we talked earlier about forming a company. Like, before the company, there was like nothing. So it's one of those chicken and egg things. You're like, you got to find some way to make something.
Right.
And then the rest will flow. So for those who are starting out, it will be think of projects you would like to work on. What's your dream project? Then if it's, depending on what discipline you're in, coding, illustrating, 3D modeling, whatever, there's something you can build. And essentially, if you bootstrap that far enough, you'll find collaborators, and next thing you know, you might not actually be a freelancer anymore. You've got your own company, which is kind of how this happens anyway, right?
Yeah.
But it's really about getting that first thing made. You need to have something to show. I think that's really important, because for us, I mean, what you make is your portfolio. If you don't have that, it's a bit hard to hire even. Yeah.
So if you come across a portfolio that wasn't up to your expectations, right? Do you just kind of say, oh, guys, we don't need people, or would you actually try to actually help that freelancers to improve on himself?
Okay, so definitely we do. Mostly because I think the games industry is small anyway, so odds are like, okay, that's my junior, that's my colleague's junior.
Right.
And I think no matter what, all of us are learning on the journey. For us, we do have a second layer, which is more for full-time hires, but sure. So it's more of a small test.
Right.
Right. So for artists, it's an art style test or a technical sort of test. There are definitely people that we keep in contact with, because that's partly how some of my team met. We used to draw together, right? So there are some people more junior that maybe we'd love to work with in 2 years. They're just not there yet. But there's definitely people that we keep an eye on.
Okay.
And then if there's something that they can do for us, sure. Except just maybe not this project or something.
Right.
But I think definitely there's there's a network at play.
Yeah. So Ashima, for the VR industries, right? Because that is really fairly new in Singapore as well, and as we all know, there's not a lot of existing talent that you can tap on.
Yeah.
So so what are some of the trends that you see in the upcoming VR industries, and also what do you think are some of the opportunities that new freelancers, can work towards too?
So, so the VR industry is quite wide. So there's two parts to it. One is 360 filming, kind of, so live action content. And then the other is CG, which isn't happening as much as live action. And I think in Singapore, what I've seen over the last maybe 6 to 8 months is that there's a lot more real interest from companies about going into that type of content. So previously we'd go out to the market and most people would be like, oh, it's interesting and I know it's a new thing, but I just don't really see how it applies to me right now. And then suddenly the shift happened where it's like, we actually really want to explore how we can do this. So can you help us, to do that? So I see the interest and opportunities are beginning to grow, and the tools are also getting more accessible. So, for example, with AR, Facebook released AR Studio, which is available to download. Anyone can use it, So I think that there are classes as well happening now in some of the polys, in some of the independent schools to teach, the basics of VR creation. But I think really, and kind of going back to your point about having something to show, you can just try it on your own. That's the big thing. So like, for example, the base engine that we use to create our content is Unreal Engine. That's a free software. So, our team is self-taught. There's a lot of information online about how to use it. So, and it kind of speaks to also that person's kind of mindset, right? That they're a self-starter. They're willing to just spend some time upskilling themselves on their own. Those things make a difference. Like when I meet someone and they're like, oh yeah, so I just bought this 360 camera and I started making things and here's something I can show. And I'm like, oh wow, okay. That's more of a conversation starter than
because I think
anything.
a lot of people, creatives especially, are perfectionists. Before they show something out, it's like it has to be perfect before it goes out. But I think in a world where information is running so fast and trends catch up so fast, technology comes up so fast, I think that's not that quite important as important as just doing it first. I don't know whether you guys agree or not.
I mean, there is one thing I think that is now starting to be talked about, which hasn't up until this point, is this idea that in the content landscape, there is this big shift happening into immersive and 3D content, that's going to be something I think that 10 years from now is a given, that you have some ability to create something 3D, something immersive. And it's not like what we do now. Like there's a new way of thinking about how to create content like that. And so I feel like people who really take that leap now will be ahead of the game when it becomes a regular thing. Even how we share things online is changing and moving in that direction. People, companies like Google have released platforms like Poly where you can share your 3D creations. That's gonna become the norm. So
but I would say that kind of mindset not everybody has. So for example, we deal with a lot of freelancers and they have different years of experience, right? So we have also very very experienced freelancers, but they doesn't have that kind of mindset. They feel that if I have a craft and this is my craft, right, and I need to perfect the craft, right, in order to actually entitle me to be a photographer or a videographer or even a soundman, right? So how do you suggest for industry or for freelancers who have been in the industry for so long, right, to actually try to start, to adopt a different kind of mindset versus how they learn,
I think
you know,
even the veterans.
Yeah.
I mean, both of you have been in your respective industries or your companies for quite some time, and I think when we meet those who have been in their roles for a certain period of time, they meet inertia. Where they're very comfortable where they are. They've been doing very well where they are, but the world is changing. And you guys, I think have met with a lot of such situations where what knew before doesn't apply anymore. So what do you think should they adopt, like mindset,
I think-
like Jay says?
I think that one is actually just let go of ego first. Because I think, because even in games, like if you ask, even for the current projects we're doing, right? So we were planning to make just like one bigger game. Then we kind of realized, wait, this smaller spin-off thing actually is totally viable. And there was a point where we were like, should we do this or not? Like, what's the harm? Like, schedule-wise, after checking all of that. I think we're at a part where user-generated content is possibly king. I won't say definitely, because there's still a place for created work, but I think people are a lot more creative than they give themselves credit for, right? So even if you look at your Instagram filters, for example, you go, where's the creativity in that? No, but people still choose, right? They lay out the shot, right? And there's all these, like, there's a ton of tutorials out there how you frame a shot, whatnot. It's like, hey, these people are actually amateur photographers, and there's post-processing, especially if, people get a bit more curious, like, what about this filter, that thing? And you could just go like, exactly, you're kind of doing post-pro here. You're kind of like doing... and the thing is, the end users, if you put it that way, like people who view your stuff, they don't necessarily care how it's made. Right? There's just so many ways to get it done. Even like the software that we work on. So we use another engine, it's called Unity. But again, like Unreal, it's free. So you just look at that and like, oh, you can use this. And there's again tons of tutorials and make something in one day. Right? It's not going to be the most polished thing, but the fact is you made it. Right? So I think now more than ever, there's so many options to start off with, and it doesn't have to be the world's best thing. There's a space for, in fact, more casual things. In fact, sometimes people get scared off if it's too polished. Right?
And now everything is about speed, right? It's about how fast you can get it done.
Well, I think there's about content as well. It's just more like stepping away from content snobbery. Because if you look at, even if I look at like my own Facebook feed or social media stream or whatever, right? Like, I think about the last few things I shared, it'd be like, there was a silly meme about football, somebody sliding. You go like, that didn't take like years of experience to make. Someone just thought it was hilarious, and I think it's hilarious enough to share. And then what was before that? It was like someone's cute cat video. And what was before that? It was like some silly stickman animation, something that was hilarious again.
Right.
So I mean, they're enjoyable, but they're definitely not like, high art. So I think that's something to... Maybe our own insecurities get in the way. So there's an audience. I mean, yes, you can bill for a certain level of quality. But I'm saying that usually there's an audience somewhere. And sometimes people even want to buy into the personal journey. So I think that's one thing with artists. Some of them go, my art isn't good enough to show yet. And you go like, yes, it's embarrassing. Yes, it's not the world's best thing. But think of it, like 5 years from now, when you're great or something, right? You look back and people go, oh my God, she got really, really good. Right?
True.
And yeah, I mean that's what actually helps sells that journey. I think that's heartwarming in a way.
Yeah.
That's true.
I mean, having said that, there's space for everyone. I feel like, if your thing is photography and you want to get amazing at it in the way that, people have been for a long time, then go for it, I really think it just depends. It does depend a lot on what kind of person you are. And there is space for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having said that, in terms of now, because both you are business owner wearing many hats, right? So other than worrying about the product of the company, you also have to worry about the funding, and then of course there is this
Funding and everybody like,
yeah, and then of course there's this helping your employee or slash freelancers, whoever that you're working with at some point, to actually upskill themselves, making sure that they have the right skill.
And like I said, and karma comes around. So actually,
Right.
I'm grateful because I think we got a lot of effectively we call lobang. Like people did us favors and introduced us to other people,
Yeah.
and a lot of that was, I guess, because when you build a culture of care. I mean, that sounds maybe a bit too big, but it's like you care for your friends and your industry and your world.
Yeah.
I think people understand that. Same thing as like your customers or your for us it's players. You can see when something is made with love, and you can see when the relationships are also considered carefully.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is important. It's practical in the long run, in fact.
No, I think that's very well said. I think for a lot of creative individuals, we all have a dream. We all start with a passion, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, living in high stress Singapore, sometimes, up to one point in time, you probably, okay, what am I doing here, right? Or maybe your family, right? Will be asking, what are you doing, right? Going after a dream. So, have you ever encountered a moment like this where it's like really at the low point, and then you're struggling, and then how do you actually, pick yourself up again and say, yes, I'm going to continue to build my dream.
How often do I feel that way? It is, it's sort of the journey of entrepreneurship is that it's ups and downs. I think probably freelance as well. It's the same, right? You have good days, you have bad days. And definitely there are the days where you're like, why did I do this to myself? But I do really believe actually in what Shawn was saying about the dream. At the end of the day, when you have nothing left, right? And it's just you and you're like, why am I doing this? It is that one thing that will pick you up.
Yeah.
And so you need to really just believe that you are going to get where you're planning to go. And the journey is going to be whatever it is. But I think you have to have that belief. And with, if you're on your own, it's hard, I think.
Yeah.
So I have a team. I have a co-founder, so we kind of can help, support each other.
Right.
So I think it is harder. So hats off to freelancers who, reach that point and can still pull themselves up. But I'm truly a believer in that. Just having a vision of where you want to go.
And just push it along.
I think my input on that actually is slightly different.
Right.
So I think it's more like you realize you're never alone, never truly alone. Because forgive me, you feel a little bit like shit, right? Then let's just assume you have some decent friends.
Let's just assume that. Okay.
Or rather, it is important to have some decent friends. Yeah, so spend
Which is
some
why
time
it's-
looking for it.
It's important to still be connected to a community somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So they might not necessarily even be your colleagues. They might not necessarily be like your blood family or whatever. But even for us, small things like we have a Facebook page for the games, right? And people every now and then are like, "Hey, so we saw the game at Game Start, and like, when is it coming out?" And you're just like, on one hand, it's a bit of stress. You're like, "Soon, guys." Soon. But on the other hand, you're like, "Okay, there are people waiting for this. I gotta do it justice." But I think as long as you're connected with that community, no, actually you're never truly alone. The fact that there are other people out there who probably feel the same way you do, right? A lot of freelancers, even bosses actually, will be like, oh, stability issues. I wish we had all of this secured for the next 10 years. That'd be amazing.
You have the funding for all the 10
Yeah,
games that you want to
that'd be great.
do.
That'd be amazing, right? That'd be great. But yeah, truly, you're not alone, because if you were to reach out, like even if you like you blend it down into like, it's not just freelancers, but you look at co-founders and you just type in co-founders something into like Meetup or
Yeah,
Facebook
yeah,
groups.
true.
You'll find
Right.
co-founders Meetup group. And you're like, definitely there's people there you can talk to
Yeah.
about all the things you're worried about. Freelancers groups, in fact, there's even more.
Yeah.
So just go like,
Yeah.
I would in fact say, you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
That's true.
You're not alone.
Yeah. It's also something I don't think people talk about enough. You know, like,
Needing the support group.
yeah, I mean, just, and that the fact that there are these really low points, you know,
Yeah.
everyone tends to kind of want to show this,
Yep.
The best.
the best,
happy
yeah,
side.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that
right.
everything's fine, it's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
Being an entrepreneur rocks.
yeah, yeah.
Just like Instagram, right? Everything is nice.
yeah. But you know, like, if you're, I guess, sort of okay with sharing about that with other people, you're right. There'll be so many other people out there who are like, I feel the same way.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's where people feel that the moment I start sharing about my down points means I need help.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you do need help, but people, I think it's the stigma that I might feel pitiful.
Or
in
is
a
this
way.
more Asian mindset, right? If I tell you what I cannot do, so I feel myself weak, but I don't want to disclose my weak side to you. Do you think there's have it got to do with like culture, value kind of thing?
I
or?
don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's more like old school, maybe. Or it's just human insecurity.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's a different kind of strength maybe in being vulnerable. And sometimes you don't know, like your trouble might be someone's lobang.
Yeah.
So I think if people tend to see it that way, then it's less threatening. Definitely, I mean, there's point when you're feeling vulnerable, you don't want to show anything at all, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I understand that, but ironically, sometimes reaching out like helps on multiple
Opens
levels.
new
Yeah, true.
doors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I once heard the saying that people are actually more afraid of embarrassment than of death.
Right.
Mm.
Is that right?
Wow.
That's right. So that's why people
hardcore.
get stage fright. They don't want to express themselves. They don't want to stand out there. They're afraid they'll get laughed at somehow, and that's terrible in their minds, and they just shake at that. So they rather let opportunities go. They rather like not step out because they just don't want to face that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we talked about the lowest point in life. So maybe you would like to share with us what's the highest point, I mean, so far in your career as
I'm
an
sure there are a lot
entrepreneur?
more coming.
Yeah.
Like, what's it so
Yeah, what's
far?
yeah.
Okay. I think it's actually being at some of the game conventions with my team. So we had an early prototype last year at Tokyo Game Show, and again at GameStart in Asia, but Tokyo Game Show was the first one, and some of the team wanted to come along.
Right.
Well, number one, it was Tokyo. Number two, actually, I really wanted them to see what, number one, the industry looked like outside. Number two, I think it's a totally different level when you see people who don't know you at all
Right.
play your game. Like that's honest feedback right there. So I think we were kind of crapping our pants a bit. We were all very nervous, and there's like so much setting up to do.
And it's Tokyo, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It's like
So
in
sort of
country that has
A
been-
bit of
yeah.
language barrier as well.
Yeah.
But then when some of the people came by and publishers came by, everybody's like, when is this game done? And you're like, actually, not yet. It's like next year, right? It's not done yet. It's like, looks really, it looks like it's coming along great. And you're just like, so I think you're really happy and exhilarated. Like what you're working on means something. And again, like I said, that comes back again when they message you on Facebook. It's like, hey, we saw this game, whatever, last year. It's like, is it done yet? And it's like, we're working on it. But yeah, I think that definitely. And again, at GameStop, when we set it up and people came by, I was like, play a game, and you just like watch them and you're like, what did I do wrong? Oh my God, we didn't fix that. oh my God, that thing there. Oh my God, I thought we fixed it. And people are like, they don't notice anything, just
Yeah,
continue
that's
playing
the
on,
thing, they
right?
don't
And
notice, yeah.
you're just like, So you can do this, and sometimes your teammate nudges you, or you nudge them. It's like, no, don't say that. We can't skew the outfit. Just watch them like play this. Then they go like, oh, that was nice. So when's it coming out? It's like that question. And then you go like, soon, later, next year, kind of thing, right? I think that makes everything worth it. That makes everything worth it. Yeah.
Great.
How about you, Ashima?
It's kind of similar. Like we took the teaser for the Phoenix on the road, so we went to a few Comic Cons around the region, and actually Indonesia was amazing because we were in Jakarta, and we had no idea what to expect, and we were demoing. It was a 3-minute piece on the Samsung Gear VR, and our booth got completely mobbed by people. And, people who came and said, I brought my friends, I watched it and I brought my friend, or someone who came and said, someone told me to come and watch this. And, one of the things about the VR industry, which a lot of people know who are in it, is that when you watch someone have their first experience and it's a good one, there's this moment where they take off a headset and the expression on their face is like unadulterated awe. I mean, I call it awe. And it's one of those things that you never really get in life that often. These truly, unadulterated experiences of awe, like you're a little kid and something's just happened and you're just like, wow. And so we see that.
Wow, but someone else's
wow. So you see that over and over again, and it is just like an addictive kind of amazing thing to see. And so, and that really is what keeps us going, because creating the content is hard. It's hard work, it's painstaking. But that thinking that you can give that to someone is like the thing that keeps us going. And that is like a massive, high.
That
every
worth
time.
$1,000 million.
Yeah.
That's why you hope it translates.
Yeah. Turn it into money. Yeah.
Hint, investors.
Right.
So, with the whole journey that you guys have been in, if you could give one piece of advice to when you guys were just starting out, or maybe even before that, to your younger self, maybe, what would you say?
That's a tough one.
Don't worry,
so
take some
hard.
time to think about it.
A lot of things to say.
Well, I think for me, I can't actually complain. I mean, the journey has been tough, but at each junction there was something to learn. There were friends to make, contacts to make, that sort of thing. So I think it was necessary. If there's any advice, it would be maybe pay more attention to stuff.
Or do more.
I mean, you can always say do more, but sometimes I think it's also the reverse. Learn to chill out a bit. What you're panicking about was not worth panicking about.
That's true.
That was not worth freaking out about. So maybe, it's strangely the reverse. Because if I talk about my younger self, then I was I'm a bit of a worrywart.
I see.
So
Right.
I get obsessive. And it's like, oh my god, I need to channel everything to solve this.
Right.
Be like, no, chill out, dude. Step back, look at the bigger picture.
Right.
Because I think that's something that I see a lot of people also fall into that trap. No, what you're doing right now, it's both good and bad, right?
Right.
Doesn't matter that much in the long run. If you're embarrassed about some things, don't worry. It won't matter much.
Right.
It's more like, did you learn something from this? And then this was going to teach you something anyway. But the world wasn't necessarily going to blow up.
I think that's a very good point. When I first, because I was from the corporate sector as well, so when I first, moved into this entrepreneurship, create a business kind of thing, one of the mentors, actually, the first thing that he told me is, Jace, you're going to start to do this yourself, right? But please remember, everything happened for a reason. Good and bad, right? Just learn from it. I feel that is actually the most important advice that I have received, and it's at the right start of the career, right? Or in that sense, moving into this. So, so every time go on bed, we just tell ourselves, don't worry, there's something to learn out of it. Yeah, you'll pass.
Well, the catch for that is unless it kills you. So it's all fine until it kills you.
But likewise, like you said, it happens for a reason. So to us, it's maybe there's even worse, right? But so this is okay. We can handle this. Yeah,
It's not so bad.
yeah, it's not so bad.
Yeah, but most of the things that I think people worry about is not actually a thing that's going to be serious. It's the things you can't spot. Then
Right.
that's where you,
Yeah.
that you're really in trouble.
Right. That's true. So Ashima, how about yourself? What would you tell your younger self?
I think persist, like just be persistent, so like it doesn't have to be big leaps you're making, but just keep moving slowly in the right direction and just persist. Because the one thing that about this journey, like, I mean, if you asked me a year ago to predict some of the things that have happened to me on this journey, I would never in a million years. Like, it just takes you in twists and turns that you just wouldn't expect. And so you just persist, just keep going one small step.
Yeah, because like I said, sometimes it's the things that you don't see.
Yeah.
And the times when you feel like, why am I doing this? You just persist, just keep going.
Yeah, persistence is important to a freelancer as well. Right. All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It has really been a very insightful discussions. But before we start to wrap up, would you all like to tell the audience again? Shawn, would you like to tell the audience about your game and where they can find it? When is it coming?
Free plug.
Okay, so basically go on Facebook, search Battle Sky Brigade. That's BATT LESKY space BRIGADE. Battle Sky Brigade. It'll pop up. Easy. Just Google that.
Very cute.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
cute bunnies.
Bunnies.
If there's bunnies, airships, floating islands, that sort of thing.
Fighting bunnies. Fierce
Yeah, go
bunnies.
look it up.
Yeah. So remember the Facebook accounts, okay? And then Ashima, yourself?
Yes, so if you want to be up to date on what's happening with the Phoenix, you can go to thephoenixvr.com. And for our company in general, warrior9vr.com.
But that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you so much
Thank
once
you so
again,
much.
to
Thank
both of
you.
you.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Freelance Creative Exchange. Subscribe to our iTunes and Spotify and leave us a review.
And also subscribe to our YouTube and leave a comment because we want to hear what you think. Let us know the questions or the freelancers you want to hear from next.
So follow us on CreativesAtWork on Facebook and Instagram, and also our new Instagram for Freelance Creatives Exchange, where we'll share a lot of our behind the scenes and all our preparations to set up for our shoot today as well.
That's right. So until then, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.